Hey, what's up, guys? NullRage here, and today we're going over some of the Omega changes. The Omega system is changing quite drastically, but before we get into this video, let me warn you, this is still in a very volatile state. Many things are changing. This is on Test Center, and nothing's quite set in stone yet, and until it goes live, nothing will be set in stone. And even after it goes live, there will be all these changes and all that. So, just keep in mind this is very early, and we'll see what this system looks like when it's as it evolves. Really, it's nothing's ever really complete, but as this system evolves, we'll see how it changes and all that. The first thing we're going to notice with the new Omega system is that it has a cap of 10,000 instead of 7,500. Now, some of you new players that haven't hit cap yet might be going, oh no, now there's more stuff to get, but don't worry, because they have also decreased the amount of experience it takes to get a single point. So it will now be easier to gain Omega points. However, older players like myself and many other Marvel Heroes veterans will have more Omega points to chase, because that's one of the biggest things with the Omega system is after you hit cap, there's little left to do in Marvel Heroes sometimes. So increasing that cap gives us more place for our XP to go. Alright, the second biggest thing is the new tab, Interstellar Exploration. And what we're going to do right now is just explore the Interstellar Exploration. Okay, alright, so looks like we've got 2 starting nodes. I haven't looked through any of this. Four starting nodes, sorry. You can start from the middle, which is Earth. You can start from way out here, Sakar, or Hala, or I'm not even gonna try and pronounce that. Nope. Alright, so let's just go through them and see what each single node does. We've got this one right here, which does plus 60 damage rating versus normal and elite enemies, 1 per level. It can scale up to 30, giving you a lot of damage rating versus normal and elite enemies for a very small cost. That was about 300 or something like that, so that could be a pretty effective node. Alright, next we've got Galador here. Gain 120 deflect rating while you are moving. Okay, so while you're moving, you'll be harder to hit. There's some scaling there. We've got about... it's a little bit more expensive than that one was, actually. Or, yeah, because that one's only 8 points to get in. This one's 36 points per point. It looks like it does not scale. Alright, next up we've got Wraith World, which will give us gain mental damage rating when you are hit with a ranged power. So sort of a retaliatory kind of thing going on here. Not a huge amount of mental damage rating, but again, all of these values are in flux and can change based on feedback given and the devs' decisions and all that. So there's a little bit of retaliatory ranged mental damage. Mental damage when you're hit with a range power. Alright, we're going to start over here now. Come out here to Chandalar. We got some gain brutal strike rating when you're hit with a ranged power. Again, retaliatory against ranged powers. We've got Sparta. Actually, let's check the 50 points per with a total of 600.
This must be some kind of test.
Yes, a test of your patience. Next we've got Sparta here. Gain critical hit rating to ranged attacks and critical damage as well. 50 points per per level there, with 300 being the cap on each of those. Could be pretty decent. I'm not sure. I mean, it's crit hit rating, crit hit damage, 2 of the highest valued stats in the game, from what I've seen of many of the min-maxers choices. Oh, now we've got some weird stuff here. This is going to be nice. Oh, Ego? Did that say Ego, the living planet? Yes. Alright. First off, we've got Nowhere. and this is a 1% chance to call in support from Star-Lord's ship, the Milano, which will do a cluster bomb strike and then afterburn damage as well. It's got a cooldown on that effect of 20 seconds, and it looks like the percentage and the damage increase with points put in. This is a proc effect, and in the previous Omega system, these are notoriously they're not very good damage wise. You're usually better going for raw stats. However, looking at the amount of damage from the proc on this, and considering if the amount of damage there scales with your own damage rating or any kind of effects like that, it might be a decent proc effect. I don't know. We'll have to let's see if we can get that to proc. If we can go over here and just have that proc. And just throw these things. There it is. There's the meteor strike. That's pretty nice. Puts this big patch of fire. It does have a 20-second cooldown. Are each of the effects separate cooldowns, or are they both together and it can proc either one? That's going to be the real question here. Come on now. Alright, well there's the fire strike again. And we're going to spend far too much time trying to get that other one to proc if we... Oh, wait. No, it's only one effect. It's only one effect. It does a... Okay, it does... The cluster bombs come down and do an initial burst, and then it burns the ground over 5 seconds. I see. I was reading that incorrectly. I apologize. That's pretty cool, though. And, you know, like I said, these things in the past have been not that great DPS-wise, but maybe this is a decent proc. I don't know. I have to play with it and see how it fits into your regular Omega builds. All right, let's go over here. Actually, we're gonna start from Earth here, so we might as well talk about Earth. We've got Earth, which is the -1 spirit cost. When you're hit while below 50%, your team up gains 10% base damage for 10 seconds. That effect has a 20-second cooldown, and then it also has just flat base damage increase. It's pretty expensive at 1,000 points to get the full 10 points in here. 100 points per point into the skill. But that is 10% base damage, which, you know, is very nice. And 10% spirit cost reduction, a very high value stat, also causing your team up to do more damage when you drop below critical health thresholds. That could be really good, especially if you're using a companion mode team up. Alright, next we've got Intergalactic Wormhole. This has a 1% chance on hit to trigger any of the following effects. All may be active at the same time. Create a Limbo Orb, which grants you 500 damage rating and 10% summoned ally damage for 10 seconds. Summon a Thunderstorm that deals energy damage per hit over 3 seconds and stuns target for 2 seconds. Summon a Shield Totem, which creates an area in which you, your allies, and enemies take 30% less damage for 8 seconds. What? I mean, why would you want the enemies to take less damage? It's sort of a cool effect, though, how it, you know, it affects you and your allies, but also affects your enemies. Sort of a downside. I don't know. Summon a cloud of poison gas, dealing energy damage over 4 seconds. Surround yourself with a missile shield that stops all incoming projectiles. All effects have a 30-second cooldown. So each one of these effects has a 30-second cooldown, which is separate from each other. And it looks like you can only put 1 point into this skill. It costs 400? Yeah, 400 points for that 1 point skill. Let's see if we can get some of these to proc. Alright, there's the missile reflect shield. So if I went over here and got hit, see? Oh, never mind. It's not going to work properly. It went away. But anyway, that shield would reflect missiles that came from the outside of the shield. Unfortunately, I got too close to the guy, so he was shooting from inside of my shield. Alright, so there we go. There's the shield totems. Now, this can protect me, but also can protect enemies? That's weird. I don't know if I like that. Oh, there's lightning. I like that effect. I mean, this skill is very visually interesting. You know, it has a lot of different visual effects, and they're not really obstructive. You know, has some ooh. You pop out orbs, 500 plus damage rating, and a size increase, and this also increases summoned ally damage by 10% when you pick up these orbs. That. A small thing to note about having this and that top one there, the Limbo Orb, which increases damage rating, that can also be picked up by allies. So you could pick up this if you wanted to run some kind of supportive type build on somebody like Emma Frost or Invisible Woman. You know, they both sort of have, or Cyclops brings a lot to the table supportively. You know, there's a number of characters that can help buff a team, and having this talent here and popping out those orbs, which increase 500 damage rating, could be very nice for team play. If you're doing group content like the new Danger Room or something like that, that could be pretty cool. Alright, sorry, I've spent way too much time on that one individual node. Let's move on to Counter Earth. Gain 1 energy for 10 seconds when you hit with a physical power, and 1 strength when you hit with a mental or energy power. Okay? So this will be very good for physical, well, actually hybrids of really any type other than mental energy. If you are a physical slash mental slash or physical slash energy, then you will have a very strong talent here. I'm not sure about the cost to reward ratio. It looks like 200 points per thing in the tree, which, again, the new scaling is all different, so I don't know how effective that really is. Alright, next we've got Ego the Living Planet, giving you durability, speed, and energy. 600 points for 1 in each of those. Total of 3 points that you can put into the skill, so a total of 3. It's pretty expensive, but again, the new scaling on all points across the entire system has changed, so my idea of expensive might be skewed. Alright, we've got 30 deflect rating, and this is on the moon. 30 deflect rating, 30 health. If you have at least 1 rank in Earth Omega node, gain 5% chance on hit to surround yourself with a damage shield that absorbs 5% damage for 5 seconds. That effect has a 30-second cooldown. That's sort of interesting. Has some interplay between the nodes. So you've got a total there of 10 points that you can put into the tree. The proc effect on that, the extra damage absorption shield, does not increase with points put into the skill. Only the deflect and health rating increase there, and it looks like 60 points per point in the node. Alright, next we've got Xandar, which is going to give us +1 speed. Speed is actually a valuable stat now for movement-based characters. And people like Nova, or anybody that's doing a movement-based build, because it increases the damage of skills that are tagged with the movement tag. In fact, Green Goblin here has a number of skills. I was playing with them thinking about a movement-based build, Nitros Boost, Wing Clip, and like Engine Upgrade, and he's got Impaling Boost. In fact, his signature is even tagged as movement. So you can now get an increase to movement powers from that skill. Let me just scroll over speed here. Yeah, base damage to movement powers now increases with points put into speed. I just want to make sure that I wasn't imagining things, but yeah. Alright, so points in Xandar could be good for movement-based characters. You've got 245 points per rank. I'm thinking because of the fact that all of these skills have had the same amount, like the scaling on after you put 1 point in hasn't changed as you're leveling up, these prices might not be finalized. So keep that in mind. But 245 points per rank and a total of 5 points of speed that you can get from Xandar. Alright, let's move out this way to Saturn, and then we'll go out for this last little, what do you call this, tail tree something, I don't know. Anyway, Saturn, we've got damage rating versus enemies targeting you. Be really nice for characters that have taunts, or like Thing, Venom, Captain America, people that want to get hit could get some extra damage rating from this skill right here. And it looks like 900 points of damage rating at the maximum rank. Let's again come back here, and 40 points per point in the skill. Alright, moving on, we've got Titan, Killing Spree. Gain 12 critical hit rating and critical damage rating for 5 seconds when you defeat an enemy. Stacks up to 5 times, 1 second cooldown. So I imagine you can't just like blow up 5 enemies at once and get your max stacks. It actually has to be, it has a 1 second cooldown on gaining that effect. So a total of 5 seconds to get ramped up completely, but you'll pretty much always have this unless you're only fighting one single target boss or something like that. There's always enemies to kill on this screen. Critical hit rating and critical damage rating. That's pretty nice, and it seems like it's a rather small investment. Yeah, at 55 points per point in the skill. It's not a huge investment for a pretty nice little amount of critical hit rating and critical damage. Alright, next we've got a Break World. 1% chance to summon a damage amplification field, which creates an area in which you and your allies deal 3% damage while enemies deal 1% damage for 10 seconds. Okay, so it boosts you by 3%, but also enemies in the area will deal more damage as well. This couples, again, similar to Intergalactic Wormhole, how it would reduce the amount of damage enemies take. This will actually increase the amount of damage that enemies do. So you have to be mindful of these effects. It'd be nice to see, similar to Break World here, if the amount, like on shield totems, if it would reduce the amount of damage that you or allies take by 30%, but reduce the amount of damage that enemies take by 10%. Therefore, it still doesn't buff them quite as much as it buffs you, and is still a choice that you might consider instead of, oh, I'm gonna make the enemies take a lot less damage. I don't want that. Anyway, Break World here scales up to a total of 5%, giving, well, a total of 15% for you and 5% for enemies. So with a 5% chance on that effect, let's see if we can, I'm actually going to come around from this side and see if we can get that amplification field to show up. Sometime. Anytime now. Anytime now. 5% chance to proc is very low. I have to say that. So you're very rarely going to see these amplification zones. Alright, come on now. I imagine if you were hitting more targets, then... Yeah, let's go over here and hit a few more targets. Let me just dash through these guys. Wow, that didn't proc it. Oh, that's my signature. I still can't see it. So either it's not showing up yet, or 5% chance is just very low, and it might actually need to increase for you to ever see it. I don't know. I mean, you know, it is 5% chance, and I've seen some of those effects still be worthwhile. I don't know, because it's gonna boost your team. Everybody in that area will get 15% more damage. Again, playing similar to Intergalactic Wormhole, how you can buff your team for group-based content could be nice theoretically. We'll see. Next, we've got Zen Law, which is going to give us deflect rating, dodge rating, but it will reduce your defense rating. So you're going to trade your defense for more deflect and dodge, making you a bit more spiky damage-wise. I don't know if I necessarily like that. I don't know if that would be something I'd want to take, but for characters that have things that increase their total dodge rating, does Green Goblin have one of those? A passive that I know Black Cat does. Black Cat has a passive that increases her total dodge rating. So something like this would be very helpful for her because she doesn't get as much bonus from defense as she gets from deflect and dodge. There's a number of characters. Nightcrawler is one that comes to mind, that work the same way. So you might consider this for a defensive boost, or rather a defensive swap, on some of those characters, because they would get more benefit. Alright, next we've got Sakaar, giving you deflect and melee damage rating, 45 points per point in the skill, with a total of 10 points for a total of 300 to that deflect and melee damage rating. Let's see. Now we're moving out this way, right? Okay. So we'll start here at the Chitauri Prime. Whenever you defeat an enemy, become invisible for 3 seconds. 30-second cooldown on that effect. Gain 30 mental damage rating for 10 seconds when you hit with a mental power. Gain 30 energy damage when you hit with an energy power. Gain 30 physical damage when you hit with a physical power. This could work. It doesn't have to be a hybrid for this to work, because you get the type of damage by hitting with that type of damage. You don't have to hit with another type. So you don't have to be a hybrid for this to work. But it would benefit hybrids just as much as it would benefit pure characters. If at least 2 different effects are active at the same time, here we go. Alright. That's the kicker here. The thing that makes it really good for hybrids is if 2 effects are active at the same time, you gain brutal rating as well. So there we go, with 300 points for the total of that, and 10 points being the maximum you can put in this skill. 55 points per. Yeah, I think some of these costs are not completely done yet, but pretty decent and a nice skill for hybrids there. Especially hybrids that use invisibility. I'm not sure how many of those there are. Next up, we've got Battle World. Unleash a lightning bolt that deals physical damage? A lightning bolt that deals physical damage. Really? Come on. It needs to be a lightning bolt that deals energy damage. It just makes more sense. I don't know. Maybe this is a special lightning bolt. And stuns up to 2 enemies for 1 second when you hit with your signature power. Gain 1 spirit for each enemy hit. Okay, so when I hit with my signature power, I do a lightning bolt. My signature power is very confusing. Let me switch to a different character with a different signature. Where's one that doesn't really... Here we go. Iron Fist has a very simple signature power. No. Give me the... There we go. Alright, so when I hit with this signature power, which is pretty much just a punch. Right? Yeah. There it is. pretty much just punch them, then a giant lightning bolt is going to come down. Let me... Boom. Oh, it's not a giant lightning bolt. It's a chain lightning kind of effect. Looks like it bounced out and hit a number of enemies. Or maybe it hits all of the enemies that are hit. I think the visual for this would be better suited as a giant lightning bolt from the sky or something like that. I'm not 100% sure what this is referencing, so I can't say for sure if that's the right visual. But I don't know, it could be kind of interesting. It would boost the damage that your signature does, you know? And for a lot of characters, their signature is when they do the most damage, so could be kind of interesting. Alright, let's go back to Green Goblin here, and reset Omega, and move on to the next one. There we go. We've got Half World. Base damage versus robots, and gain 1% base damage for 10 seconds when you hit with both a melee and a ranged within 5 seconds of each other. Okay, so I've got a melee here, Impaling Boost, and a ranged skill. I need a ranged skill. I don't have any ranged skills on my bar. Oh, there's one. Rocket Barrage. Okay, that's going to give us 1% base damage. So it'll be really nice for... It also gives you increased base damage against robots. And that's an odd thing to really seek out, because there aren't a whole lot of robots in the game that you're really concerned with doing damage to. Most of the raid bosses are demons, or I don't even think Onslaught counts as a... No, he's not a robot. Because he's something else. He's sort of robotic, maybe a bit, with his armor. I don't know how much... He's got a lot of armor on. I don't think he's robotic in any way. But he's very armored. But, you know, you've got mutants and you've got demons as your raid bosses that you care about. This might be decent if you... for certain danger room scenarios, if you want to increase your damage done there or something. But it looks like it's... How many points is that? It's pretty cheap. 40 points per point put in the skill for a total of 15% increased base damage against robots, and also 15% base damage for 10 seconds when you hit with both a melee and ranged power. That's a huge amount of base damage increase for a melee ranged hybrid character. That's pretty nice. Alright, next up we've got Skrullos. And this is going to give us, whenever you defeat an enemy, become invisible. And when you hit with them... Oh, okay, it's very similar to this skill over here, except for melee ranged hybrids instead of different damage type hybrids. You've got melee damage increases when you hit with a melee power, range damage increases when you hit with a range power. If both effects are active, gain critical rating. There you go. So if you're a ranged melee hybrid, then you will benefit pretty nicely from this skill right here. 10 points being the maximum you can put in for a 60 points per point. Pretty decent cost to value ratio, I guess. And then finally, we've got Hala. Brutal strike rating, crit rating, and damage rating to physical powers. If you're a physical character, it's going to be a nice place to get some extra damage output, because it's going to increase all of your relevant values here. 20 points is the maximum you can put in the skill. At 400 points for all of it, it looks like it's 20 points per point. That's a decent, let's see, 120 maximum, but it's spread over all of those values. And when you have all of those values together, they sort of add up to pretty great amounts. This could be a pretty valuable node, I'd say. Alright, we've got a number of changes throughout the rest of the tree. Okay? Now, because of the volatile nature of the rest of the changes, a lot of costs are changing and various things like that. A lot of things in the psionics tree have changed. In fact, the biggest one that I noticed, I think, was Phoenix Force. I don't think they've Yeah, I don't think they've changed Legion or anything like that. I know they there were some changes to Onslaught, I believe, but a number of the skills here have changed minor what might seem like minor things. The math of it all has changed, and that's a bit over my head sometimes. So what I'm going to do is, in the description, I'm going to link to a forum post detailing all of the changes as they evolve, and then eventually, once this patch goes live, to the patch notes where you can read through all of the different cost iteration changes and all that, so you can see exactly which nodes have changed in value and in cost, and make your decisions on how you want to set up your new Omega builds from that. Let me know what kind of builds you guys are thinking about working on. Like I said, I know a lot of the costs across pretty much every tree
I'm
have
always
changed,
here,
so I have
watching
no
from the
idea what
wings.
I'm going to do. I'm going to watch what other people do and then sort of build off of that. That's generally what I do with a lot of this very math intensive, trying to figure out what's um, the best nodes damage wise to get the most value out of. I do like some of the proc based things though, like this nowhere, having Milano call down a cluster strike. I'd like to see those damage oriented proc effects. Those are always the most interesting for me. I don't like raw stats. Yes, they're more effective a lot of times, but they're boring, let's be honest. So I'd like to see more damage based proc effects that are worthwhile point investments in this new Omega system. That's the biggest thing that I'd like to see from this, and I hope that it's here. I don't know. We'll see when this thing goes live and I start playing around with the Omega points. Alright, guys, I hope you have enjoyed this little bit of a look at the new Omega system. Just to recap the major points, the cap is increasing to 10,000. Each point will cost less, however, XP, so it'll be easier for new players to gain Omega points. The cap will increase for veteran players, so you'll have more points to chase, and cost and values across the entire tree are changing to hopefully make it more fun and interesting. Alright guys, I will see you in the next video. Until then, take it easy, have a good one, peace.